pretty soon.
Will it be the same stream link? Because sometimes with new streams, they do a new link.
Gotcha.
Oh, it did go live on YouTube with our behind the scenes. So our behind the scenes is live on YouTube. It shows it as a 4-minute stream.
Uh-oh.
Because I can see it now. It says streamed 4 minutes ago. Oh, it's 26 seconds long and it's us behind the scenes chatting.
That's not awkward.
Very.
Are we good?
To get started.
Oh, there we go. The beginning of this stream was just as rocky as 2022. I love seeing you, Chris and Emily. How are you?
Pretty good. Glad to be here.
So happy to see you guys. We all actually became closer and much more well acquainted throughout 2022 with everything going on and being online. Hi, everyone. I am lawyer Limor. My name is Limor Mojdehiazad, and I'm a family law attorney. Online, I'm known as Lawyer Limor, and I covered many celebrity cases last year, as did Chris and Emily, and we're just going to be chatting about that today. Hi, Chris. How are you?
Pretty good. Happy to be here. My name's Christopher Melcher. I'm a practicing attorney. I'm doing divorce cases in California, but my passion is really doing legal commentary for traditional media outlets. I'm also on Twitter, and this is the kind of thing that that's great, is kind of meeting everyone on social media, the two of you. It's just been an incredible experience going through these stories and seeing everybody's different perspective. And in this program, we're going to be just having a conversation about some of the common threads that go through each of these big celeb cases, the lessons that we can learn if we're lawyers, the lessons we can learn if you are a citizen journalist, or if you're just a fan for one of these people going through one of these horrible legal disputes. Oh, we lost your audio.
Ooh, Emily, audio.
I know. I was starting to say I'm in the middle of technical issues because I'm also streaming the Murdaugh trial live, and trying to do both is always fun. I am Emily D. Baker. I run the Emily Show podcast, and I love doing legal commentary, though I've been licensed and practicing for 17 years, but practiced in the district attorney's office in LA for 10. So I love getting to meet y'all, talking about the cases that we all have in common and how much we learn about lawyering for that. So I'm going to switch over my feed to my other audio so I can actually not be on delay, and we'll go from there, because, you know, tech is life. If lawyers know anything, it's tech issues, because it happens every case we've seen and everything we deal with. Lawyers and tech issues just go hand in hand like French fries and ranch dressing. It's just what it is.
Ranch dressing. I love it.
Yep.
So one of the biggest case, I guess I think last year was Depp Heard, and that dominated not only because of the people involved, but I mean, this was televised, and I think it took a lot of people by surprise, because Johnny Depp had gone through the case in England against The Sun for defamation previously, and that got a lot of attention, but those proceedings, of course, are not televised. And so even though the story was very similar in England, it got so much more attention in Virginia because of all of that, the camera in the courtroom. And I think it really, just within a day or two of the testimony starting, that thing just completely blew up. And I don't know if Emily or Limor, if you felt like, did you anticipate that there would be this much attention on that case?
You know, it's funny because I didn't want to cover the case. I had done a profile on Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, way before the case started, or we knew it was going to be televised. And I told my audience, this was such a toxic couple. I'm so happy they're over. And then people told me the case was going to be televised, the defamation case. And I just thought, I'm not going to cover that. I didn't really like them as a couple. I don't know if it'll be interesting. It's a defamation case. Like, how juicy could it be? And my followers, they convinced me to cover it. And I started on day one, and I had no idea what was going to happen. And I had no idea that people would be so interested. It went from, what was the dynamic between these two people before this case? What is this case about? And lawyers are cool. That's what blew my mind. People really were interested in just us as individuals too. And they wanted to know from us, what are these objections? What does this word mean? Why are they doing this? And, we were the ones who kind of let them know every single thing in court is set up and discussed beforehand, the outfits, which direction they're looking, what they're saying, what words they can't say, if they're laughing, all of those things. And, it was one of those where I know Emily right now is covering the Murdaugh trials. It was just day to night coverage of Depp v. Heard. Everyone was interested and everyone wanted to hear from us. And I had no idea that was going to happen.
It was a very interesting coverage because I did live. I mean, my audiences started calling it court casting. So the law nerds now call it court casting because it's basically sports casting, but live court, which fills my broadcast dreams from back in the day in high school, watching things like the O.J. Simpson trial. But doing day-to-day coverage of the case, you could see it grow every single day. And by verdict, I had 370,000 live concurrent viewers the entire day that the verdict was coming in. I think I broke a pen, but I didn't think that there would be moments from court that would go so viral and then spurned so much commentary in legacy media about the coverage. So legacy media was covering the trial and then started covering the coverage of the trial. And that I absolutely didn't expect. I knew people would be interested because it was pop culture. We knew there were going to be details about the inner workings of a celebrity marriage. And we knew that there had been this almost, I call it kind of 3 acts. You had the divorce and the sparring with the divorce. And then you had the UK case that didn't go Johnny Depp's way. And now you have this other defamation case with the actual speaker involved. And there's cross complaints. And there was really interesting litigation leading up to it, really smart lawyering. Picking the venue in Virginia at the beginning was good lawyering. And so from a lawyer perspective, you're watching great decision-making in the motions in limine. There's fights over the technology, what's going on with the phones and all of that. And then we get into coverage of the coverage. And that was fascinating to watch too. I imagine that the lawyers got thousands and thousands and thousands of emails from both sides with people commenting on, did you see this TikTok video? And that Milani palette couldn't have been released yet. I don't know how the lawyers stayed focused other than maybe have somebody at the firm weed those out and not look at it. But we know rebuttal witnesses came out of the woodwork because of the live trial coverage. And that's something I don't know if even the lawyers anticipated, is people seeing it going, oh, I know about this, I was there, and then reaching out to the lawyers on their own. And we're seeing the internet engage in trials that are televised in a very different way and a very direct way. The judge in the Murdaugh trial is getting emails daily and talks about them and puts them on the record. It happened in the Darrell Brooks case. The judge was getting emails about Reddit threads. And so now we're seeing the public, not lawyers, but the public engaging with the court directly. And that's something, if lawyers don't consider before going into a trial that might have high public interest, they absolutely have to.
Well, and that's what was really eye-opening to me, is to see that engagement and how different it is from like OJ, where it was literally just being broadcast to us. And it was like we had all those dramatic elements, but there wasn't a conversation that we saw with Depp Heard. And that's what I was so impressed with, was that there were so many people, no matter what side of that case you were on, that were super involved. And all of the court records that they obtained from the English case and the Virginia case, those were posted. So we could easily go online and get those and see contradictory statements that have been made in the English case. So people have spent a tremendous amount of time putting that in there. And like Emily says, listening to the testimony and saying, whoa, that's not right. That was something, said something different earlier, or this product that was allegedly used didn't even exist at that time. There's some allegation about that. So there is a conversation that could be had. And I think as us practicing lawyers, using that information there and leveraging off of that fan base. The same with Britney, which was much more one-sided. All of the Free Britney folks, there was a tremendous resource that I realized when I started commenting on the case. It's like these folks had followed that case for years and were highly dedicated. A lot of them weren't taking seriously, but there was a huge amount of resource and help that they provided Britney in that case, and then to be able to provide it on new media in a way that we just can't on traditional media in a 30-minute or 30-second soundbite.
The sound bites are so hard. It's like, could you give us a minute on this? I'm like, I stream for 4 hours. And that's the thing about new media, that when you have lawyers giving commentary on cases like this, there's a more in-depth dive into actually what are hearsay objections, not just memeing objection hearsay in court, and actually having the public on a worldwide scale understand the US legal system better, which I think is to everyone's benefit. Transparency in the courts is to everyone's benefit, except maybe the stress of the lawyers directly involved in the case. Because if you've never done a case like that before, I imagine the amount of eyes, I wasn't prepared for the amount of attention that case brought. I don't know if anybody was. It's when you get a lot of people looking at one thing at one time, there's a lot of conversation and it's a lot of energy. And that's different depending on the case. And we saw that pick up towards the end with the Britney Spears case as well. Christopher, you were there, like man on the street
Yes.
report from Britney Spears, some of the hearings, and you were there the day that the conservatorship ended, and you got to see not just the eyeballs on social media, but in real life. What was that like for you? Did you ever think you would be a man on the street reporter for court cases?
Yeah. Well, that's my dream job too, watching the OJ trial and stuff. And I just thought, like, I always wanted to do that. And then to be there when the conservatorship, at least the initial stages of it, was ending, was so incredible to see all those folks. They had to shut down the street in front of the courthouse to accommodate everybody. But to see that level of engagement in a court case, and then people wanting to know, what are these terms? What do these documents mean? And for me to be able to provide that translation to folks, I just love that all around, because I love the law and other people who are interested in it because they have these other reasons. They want to support somebody like Brittany or Johnny or Amber, whatever it is, and to be able to bridge that was an incredible experience. And, I think going forward in this conversation, we want to talk about like how lawyers and parties can leverage all of this power, but it's not really being utilized. It seems like a lot of the lawyers just don't even understand that it's out there.
Yeah, I think it's such a detriment for any attorney who doesn't know how to handle social media or PR, right? Because social media is everyone's PR now, right? Everyone has some sort of presence online. And in family law, I mean, one of the first things you tell your clients is clean up your social, please. I don't want to see screenshots from exhibit A to Z of things that you've posted, places that you went, the geo tags when they tell mom or dad that they're this place with the kid and they're in the other place with the kid. And these are such simple things that we've always tried to guide our clients to do and to listen to us. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they forget what they've posted, right? And other times they're thinking, what are they going to do with the screenshot of a Ferrari I got yesterday when I just asked the court to modify my spousal support to 0, right? So I don't pay the other side 0, but I bought a Ferrari yesterday. And I think that, everyone's presence, the clients and the attorneys online is something that everyone needs to get a handle on. I mean, at this point, I hope everyone knows how to take a screenshot. I hope everyone knows how to mute themselves, unmute themselves.
Elaine, your mic. You are assuming way too much, because I have read, that was totally my Elaine moment. I have read so many of these motions where the lawyers are trying to say this was posted on Twitter, but they can't explain how they verified it, and they're not capturing it correctly. And it's okay if you are not a tech savvy lawyer. First, hire tech savvy people or hire a company that can do this, but understand what can be seen. And we're seeing that play out in Murdaugh now. One of the defense attorneys was tweeting about it, and they were arguing over whether it was a quote tweet or a retweet. And this is exactly what came up during Depp Heard. Is a quote tweet publication, is a retweet publication. Did you have to type something in because it's different intent? And we're seeing that play out, that the lawyers maybe don't always understand what can be gathered or how much metadata can be there. And we're going to start seeing that come up again and again and again.
So one of the things we saw in Depp Heard was this counterclaim. So Johnny Depp had sued Amber Heard in Virginia for a defamatory op-ed piece about him. And Amber Heard said, okay, well, I'm going to sue you back, not for a statement that you, Johnny, made, but for a statement that your attorney, Adam Waldman, made. And those statements were made to some media outlets and also to some folks that were covering the case on social media. And so he was really ahead of his time, because this goes back several years ago, where he was, Adam Waldman, interacting with these folks and providing court documents and information so that they could get that story out there. And Emily and Limor, are you seeing lawyers kind of coming to you and saying like, hey, I can't talk on the record, but here is some information that my client or I would like to be shared?
Some off, some on the record. And I've done interviews with lawyers involved in cases I'm covering in rare circumstances, the Girardi case, because the Girardi case is such an unique circumstance. But yes, I get lawyers coming to myself and my team all the time and being like, hey, we're filing this if you want to cover it. Or, hey, if you have questions about this, I'm a resource for you if you want to ask me why I'm doing something here and there or what have you. And what I found helpful for them is when legacy media covers what I'm covering, I at least know it's run through a lawyer analysis. Now, look, if you file a motion and you're talking about Kevin Hart and you call him Kevin Hard the entire motion, I'm going to probably mock it a bit on the internet because it's funny. But I really do try to give the lawyers the benefit of the doubt in the cases. But yeah, they come to me as not just as a subject matter expert, but as a commentator. And I appreciate it.
Yes, I've been contacted by several litigants in high profile cases and attorneys in high profile cases. And I've had attorneys tell me their clients hate me because of something I posted. And I'm very frank with them. I'll take it down if you need me to take it down, if it's not factual or whatever it is. But outside of that, when we're posting the facts of the case, which I know is something that Emily is all about, Chris, I know you're obviously all about that too. We're not, my opinion is the fun part, but that's not the meat of the comment. That's not the meat of what I'm putting on the internet. The value comes from, there's so much noise
graciously
comes to these stories.
Thank you.
There's so much noise when it comes to certain stories, and we want to make sure that the truth is out there, right? So I think that was the theme with all of our social media content throughout the year. And I think that the reason that most people now trust us as opposed to traditional media is because we're in it for a different reason. We're just here to give value to our audience.
And I think that what I've seen is on the traditional media side, where a lot of the lawyers were thinking, hey, well, let me just call TMZ or call, some other outlet and try and get a story out there. Well, number one, it's kind of hard to get their attention. And even when you do, it's a soundbite that you're going to get for your article or your case, where it's maybe going to be 30 seconds, a minute, 2-minute piece. But on YouTube or TikTok or Twitter, we could have much more long form content, document analysis out there. So again, I think it's a resource that's not being utilized as much as it should be by litigants and attorneys, but we'll see it probably more. But then it also raises some questions about the liability of the speaker. And going back to Adam Waldman, where he made these statements and then ended up getting sued, Well, he didn't get sued, but Johnny Depp got sued, saying that, well, these statements were made on Johnny's behalf, and the jury finding that at least one of the statements was defamatory and awarding damages, $2 million against Johnny for that statement. Now, I think that could have turned out differently had Johnny waived the privilege and been testifying about whether that statement was authorized, and also if Adam had been given the chance to talk more about why he had a reasonable belief in the content of that statement. But in terms of that liability, we've seen that come up in the Harvey Weinstein case. We've seen it in the Bill Cosby case, where somebody comes out as a counsel for one of these people and saying just a denial, like, my client didn't do this. This is a lie. It's completely false. It's a shakedown. And then getting sued by the alleged victim for denying it as a defamatory statement. So again, a little bit of a problem there. But I want to address with Emily, if you've had situations where you've been asked to produce in discovery, information that you've received from a source, and whether you've been able to use the reporter's shield privilege.
I have, and I have done that in Tennessee. I have had people try to subpoena communications that I've had with sources, and I'm like, absolutely not. But also I have made sure to set up what I am doing so that I am absolutely covered by media exceptions in the state where I live. So I have had that happen. I've never turned anything over, and I won't. I'm happy to fight it. I now am a full-time content creator. I love what I do. I love what I talk about, but I did not end up in a kind of a Waldman situation. It was a different case that I was covering, but we're seeing it more and more. We saw it in Petito. They just allowed attorney Stephen Bertolino to be brought into that case. And I cover this today, but in the Idaho case, I don't know if either of you have been following the defamation case that's going alongside the quadruple homicide, but there's a TikTok creator who was sued for making accusations against a professor in Idaho, stating that she committed the murders. And the professor sent multiple cease and desists, as sometimes content creators do. And lawyers, if you are not familiar with content creators, know that anything you send them will be made content. Though I have seen lawyers copyright their cease and desist lawyers so that they can be taken down using DMCA if they put them up as content. But know that if you send a content creator a cease and desist, it will become content with your client, likely as the butt of the joke. And if you don't know that audience, it will go badly for your client and for you. But sent multiple cease and desists and then sued the TikTok creator. The TikTok creator just sued the lawyers, is trying to counterclaim the lawyers and the professor, pro se. So this could be a pro se client that spends a whole lot of time spending a whole lot of money that this professor is going to have to pay her lawyers to deal with, even though it's total crap. And that is something that when you're dealing with content creators, they might not be your traditional opponents that you're used to, with a lawyer telling them this is not going to go well for you. Because if they think they can just bounce the country like Tasha K after the Cardi B case, they're just going to say, whatever, we're going to make content. And they make money, even if they're getting slammed in court. If their name is out there, they see it as a net positive, not a net negative. So the calculus is different in dealing with those types of clients or dealing with those type of opponents as well. And it's wild.
It's wild and it's fun.
Yes. I mean, I don't know if it's fun for the clients that are spending the money to fight pro ses that can file whatever, but we're going to have to see some kind of shifts in strategy on how to deal with that, and lawyers being aware of the strategy when dealing with a content creator. We saw this with the Ethan Klein's a large YouTuber and podcaster, was sued by a Hollywood producer, Ryan Kavanaugh, and I don't think realized what would happen when Ethan Klein's online community saw that go down. And so Kavanaugh tried to sue for brigading of app reviews for his app. And the community's like, well, we're not coordinating it with Ethan. We're pissed off that you're trying to sue our favorite creator. And so when you don't perceive how the community is going to respond, it's not maybe just necessarily your opponent. And it's wild.
I love that.
Limor, I had a question for you, which was, when to speak and what to say if you're a celeb going through one of these things. And in Pitt Jolie, we've got Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie. For some reason, what is it, 7, 8 years or something after they've split up, still going through some custody issues and then a dispute over a winery. And when I've covered it, it's really Angelina's side that is making statements and giving information. Brad has really not said anything outside of his court filings. And, to me, I think that reflects well on his character. He just wants to keep this private, doesn't want to engage in the negativity, but then the narrative is shaped and he has no control over it. So what do you think on that approach? Is the classic say nothing outside of court? Is that even valid still, or do you think that you got to get in there and say something?
I think that it's valid to an extent. So if Angelina Jolie or the other party in a case is just making themselves look like a clown on social media, in the press, they're putting things out there to put throwing dirt on the other party, let them continue to do that until and unless there is a significant allegation that's even outside of any of the court filings, any of the pleadings. It's just something that comes out of nowhere. Then I would make some sort of statement. And, the typical statement is we often see attorneys say, stop playing this in the court of public opinion. We want to keep this private. I think a quote like that always makes the other side look really, really bad. And, Brad and Angelina, to me, they're A-listers, right? So them making any sort of statement is a little bit out of the ordinary for them, right? Because they don't really, all of the public attention on them was just spectators, right? They're fans just wanting to know more. They're not really on socials as much. If you have a significant presence on social media, I think that you need to make a statement when something's going on, because your audience and the people who don't like you are going to create the narrative, like you said, and it's important to really take control of what people are saying. And what an amazing way to do that now. You have your own page, people will repost, Emily will talk about it, I'll talk about it, you'll tweet about it, then we'll all be on Court TV next week also talking about it, right? So if you want to make a statement, it's so much easier than it used to be.
But you can do it in court papers too. And I think we're seeing this being used effectively by lawyers that are savvy of it, because when the litigants are making statements, it can get messy very quickly. We're seeing lawyers getting sued over the statements they're making. And I think it really depends on the client. An A-list celebrity is very different than a business owner, is very different than a content creator. But we've seen this work to kind of great effect, where even if a company might lose in the court, they might win in the court of public opinion, or a litigant might win in the court of public opinion, and they almost don't care if they lose in court because it's still a net positive for them. We saw this with a cake lawsuit over in the UK, Colin versus Cuthbert. It was the company Aldi that had ripped off the Caterpillar cake, was clearly in the wrong, but they won social media by poking fun at this bigger company coming from that for them. And it's happening now in the Utah cookie wars. Crumble is gotten into it with a bunch of smaller cookie providers. Crumble had kind of won the social media game, but now the smaller cookie providers that are being sued have taken out billboards all over the place to start shading Crumble. And the weight of social media is behind the little guy that's making fun on social media. So there is a strategy to it, and it has to be done strategically. Litigants just flaming out on Twitter is not going to go well for them in court. But a social media and PR strategy, if you are in litigation, can be effective. But also, if you're an A-lister, I think I'm not saying anything to court might help. We saw that with Johnny Depp. Public opinion was pretty negative towards him until this started in court, but it wouldn't have shifted if cameras weren't in the courtroom. Do you guys think cameras in the courtroom need to be part of a legal strategy from the beginning?
Ooh. Chris,
I mean, if you could get it, and that's the problem. We have all these different jurisdictions, and federal versus state or overseas, and we saw in England it's just very much closed off, and in the United States we have open access to courts. These are public, and these are our proceedings, and we have a right to know what goes on in them. But then we have judges who sometimes want to really constrain access, and I had brought the case on behalf of USA Today to get online remote access to the Britney Spears thing.
And I
ended up
appreciated
losing
your
that.
filing so much. I appreciated it so much because they cut that remote audio access program and it was so annoying. It was a great filing.
Yeah, I was hoping we'd get the Court of Appeals attention on that to allow remote access for everyone. I mean, I did it on behalf of a media outlet, but it was on behalf of the public, everyone wanting to know what's going on in that courtroom. And they had previously allowed some remote access and got angry when somebody broke the rules and took it away. So I'm a strong advocate for that access. I think that the court system works better. Like they say, sunshine, works in opening up here and making sure we're doing the rules right. But it definitely changes the behavior of folks when they're in court. The lawyers and the parties and the judge act differently. And I got to think it also affects the jurors. Now, in terms of content of court papers, and I've been struggling with this as a lawyer for some of these celebs. And I know, like in the past, like prosecutors especially would, they want to be careful. They're not going to go press release things, but then they might put something in a court paper, a filing that maybe really acts like a press release. And I've seen a lot of lawyers do that. And it's hard, though, I think, to balance when you're now acting as the advocate, what to put in these court papers, because it's going to be misinterpreted perhaps by commentators. And so it is a very difficult balance, I think, to make as to what to put in and what to leave out, because this stuff's going to be out there and commented on viciously or sometimes favorably.
It depends on what you bring. I mean, we saw when Lil Nas X combined with the art collective Mischief to do the Satan shoes that were a Nike shoe, but they were being redesigned after they had been sold. So the art collective bought a bunch of Nikes, redesigned them, redesigned the exterior, and then was reselling them. Well, Nike was getting a ton of bad press over those shoes, and they kept saying, we're not involved in these shoes. These are being redone after resale. But the press didn't pick up Nike's side of it, so they sued. The lawsuit brought all the headlines, Nike sues, and I think that was enough of a signal to the public, like, oh, Nike didn't make Satan-themed shoes. Okay, we don't have to be bad on Twitter anymore. And so the lawsuit kind of ran its course inside of like 2 weeks, but it served the purpose. So you have to think that that was the only way. And we just recently saw this with Balenciaga too. It's sometimes the only way to get the media's attention is if you bring a suit, because just saying that you're mad about it might not get picked up as broadly as particularly a company might want it.
Now, Limor, with the Alec Baldwin, case, I mean, it was 2022, big case, now spilling over into 2023. I mean, are you seeing your audience interested in that case or?
So obviously when it first happened, everyone was waiting to see what was going to happen. I think the world was shocked to see that Alec Baldwin was just giving quotes on a hike. I think it was, right? How that's why when, I get asked the question about a camera in the courtroom, I guess for me, obviously, yes, things are public record. Everyone should be able to have access. But as an attorney, do I want a camera in the courtroom? I guess it depends on my client control, right? Because if I have a client that I'm sitting there telling them, I may tell them, talk about this, don't talk about that, right? Depending on what they need to actually disclose. And then they're going on a hike with their wife and giving quotes, that could ruin your entire case. So if you don't have the client control, then I guess it depends. But that case, I think a lot of people were shocked that any charges were filed against the actor who is going on set to play a role who they believe, the audience believes, has no control over whether it's a real gun. They probably think it's a fake gun. You're on set of a movie. But everyone has wanted to get updates and know about what's going on. And I think Alec Baldwin also did a sit-down interview at one point, right?
Yeah.
And
He sat down with George Stephanopoulos. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, no, it was a very thorough sit-down interview.
Yes. Yes.
And the probable cause declaration, because if anything, he talked himself into a prosecution in that case.
Crazy. Who thought it would be a good idea?
Alec Baldwin clearly thought it would be a good
Yeah,
idea.
there we go. That's who. That's who thought. Yes, but the audience very interested in a case like that. That's what I've seen.
Client control only goes so far.
You see, yeah, you see. So that camera in the courtroom, and yeah, I think that people are really loving seeing these cases play out on television. Well, not even on they want to watch it on YouTube and TikTok.
I mean, they put the YouTube on the television.
Yeah.
Now, Emily, on we had done a different panel on the Baldwin case, the Russ case, and but then afterwards, we've seen now with the prosecution having to withdraw the gun enhancement. So people who are not familiar with the case, he's being charged with involuntary manslaughter for using a real weapon on set that was loaded without checking it, resulting in a death. And the hammer that they had charged him with was this mandatory 5-year gun enhancement. And to me, I thought, okay, well, he's going to have to take a deal on this thing because if he's convicted, it's a 5-year mandatory. Well, it turns out that that enhancement law was enacted after the offense. And so his attorneys, Quinn Emanuel, is going after all this, and they get them to back down. Also making a motion to disqualify the special prosecutor because she's now been appointed as a legislature, and they're making a separation of powers argument.
It's a really interesting argument, though.
And I'm kind of thinking like, hey, if this is downtown LA, 9th floor, we're used to like these gigantic high profile criminal cases. We had Danny Masterson and Harvey Weinstein happening on the 9th floor at the same time. LA can handle this, but you're talking Albuquerque, New Mexico. They had to get funding for prosecuting that case. So, I mean, what are your thoughts on like how when a celeb finds themselves outside of New York or Miami or LA, I mean, do they have an advantage here in a criminal case because that little prosecutor office maybe can't withstand a Quinn Emanuel?
I think there is some advantage. I mean, I was in the LA DA's office for over 10 years. I've tried cases on the 9th floor. I've worked at airport court. So we have had celebrity cases going on in my courthouse that I've been second chair on. We've definitely dealt with it, but we're also used to dealing with it. LA DA has an entire media relations department. It was great. It was like somebody would call you and be like, can we talk about this case? It's like the number for media relations. It's 213. Go call that. I don't want to talk to you at all. But I realize that it's also one of the largest prosecutorial agencies, not just in the nation, but in the world, and that most agencies don't have those resources. When Santa Fe got extra funding to bring on the special prosecutor, I would have thought that somebody would have looked at this statute and wondered if this was the right one. Because even when I was looking through the law in New Mexico, I was like, there should be a 3-year enhancement. This 5-year enhancement doesn't seem to apply. So I was always like, I don't know how this 5-year enhancement applies. It seems odd. And I was waiting for the charging documents. But this prosecutor said, we're going to charge 4 people. We need extra funding to charge 4 people. We need a special prosecutor to charge people. We're going to charge Alec Baldwin. They said they were gonna forever. And then they finally charge him and have to withdraw some of the charges. I think that if you're Alec Baldwin's attorneys, you're like, oh, okay, don't worry. We're not taking a plea deal ever. We are going to beat this case because we've already beaten it this far along. So I do think it gives an advantage being able to outspend at some point, which does frustrate people in the general public because they look at 2 tiers of justice. So if you can spend on a massive firm that's going to bring these arguments, not every attorney is looking at separations of powers in a criminal case that can be reduced to a misdemeanor. Most probably aren't because they're busy. But Quinn Emanuel did, and it's a really good and interesting argument. I'm very curious to see what the court does because I think they have a point. What do you think? I think they have a point.
Yeah. It doesn't sound. It doesn't sound good. Doesn't sound good. I'm trying to keep neutral on that one, but it doesn't sound good. And and they had to get funding for this special prosecutor. So the lawyer was a career prosecutor, and I guess now is maybe, I don't know if it's a part-time legislature or full-time, but they had to get funding. So the county had to get, I think they had asked for 300 something thousand. They got maybe 150,000 for her position. So it puts them definitely on the back foot on that case. And So yeah, I think if the advice to celebs, if you get in trouble, do it in a small town, would be the takeaway from that.
No.
Now,
Actually,
And that's so sad because the outspending, you see that all across every different type of law, right? We see it in family law all the time, Chris. You see, if the other side papers you, right? Discovery requests every minute of every day, 10 associates on a case, and the big partner, the big name is on the case, right? It's likely that the other side's just going to give up. So it's also, a testament to the big players in the legal field and having, just the resources to do these things that other firms sometimes they just can't. But like you said, Chris, we are also being underutilized. The social media aspect that is really the PR of regular citizens now is also just being underutilized.
well, it's not just PR of regular citizens, it's the news agency of regular
News
citizens.
agency, that's right.
It's where people are getting informed. And if you have a case where you need your client's story needs to be told, not just in court, but also in public, just going to legacy media isn't going to tell the full story. And if you're not paying attention to things like Reddit and Twitter, even if you think it's something that you don't want to do, someone in your firm needs to be paying attention to it. Not only are there potential witnesses there and there are potential problems there, but there's a lot of people who think they've solved your case. Or there are people that can help you with your case because they've downloaded videos off of YouTube that have since been deleted, or they caught an Instagram live that only stayed up for a day. So the resources on the internet are vast, and there is room to crowdsource and potentially save your client a ton of money if there's already a repository of videos of the opposing party doing something. And we saw that in criminal cases. I'm very deep into South Carolina at the moment, but we saw them crowdsourcing videos from the night of a boat wreck and other things. And we saw that in the Gabby Petito case, crowdsourcing video from around the area where her van was last seen. So the internet is a powerful tool that can become unwieldy. And if it turns on your client, it can become very unwieldy.
Have the two of you seen Don't F with Cats on Netflix? Everyone needs to watch it because it is a group of Redditors and Facebook groupies or whatever they're called, solving a criminal case just using Google Maps. They go on Google Maps to see where this person went, how they went, where is the convenience store, where is this? They use the internet. I mean, they did a better job than the investigators on this criminal case. It is such a good documentary. And I think, most of the true crime documentaries now that we're seeing on streaming services, they have a social media component to them. So if you don't, and I know there are a lot of attorneys who don't know what Reddit even is. So I think that's really good advice that if it's not going to be you, there should be someone on your team.
I think go ahead, Christopher.
Well, no. I mean, this is what was amazing in Depp Heard and some of these other cases that we've seen. It's like having 1,000 investigators for free. Mm-hmm. And if they're engaged in the story or they're connected somehow to the person that's going through it, they will do that research. And if testimony's coming out about whether an incident occurred, whether somebody was in a particular place, there may be video of that. There may be photos of that incident. It may not be on the person's feed. It may be on somebody else's feed that they can say, look, I found it over here, a photo of this person maybe at the location at the time that the incident allegedly happened, or maybe better, somewhere else, and providing an alibi. And it's just going out and asking for that information and then trying to filter it through. And I think that's where a lot of times the law offices get overwhelmed, because how would you process all those tips? But I think that would be well worth it to have somebody trying to be clearing all of that information because they're hot leads.
We have a question in the Q&A and it says we can answer it live. It was from Nadia. Nadia, if I pronounce your last name wrong, I apologize. It's Heshtamati, I think.
Heshmati.
Thank you. I will pronounce everything wrong always and always. I've learned very much in the South Carolina case. I will pronounce it wrong. But asked, what do you guys think about Tom Girardi and Erica Jane. Have I've been covering it a lot. Limor, have you been covering it?
Listen, I covered it for a little bit. Okay. And then I got the state bar has asked me 555 million questions about my account
So many questions
and the this. And I don't want to hear Tom Girardi's name ever again because I'm a little bit annoyed because what a poop show that whole thing was. And now, these checks should have been in play from the very start. It's very unfortunate they weren't. But that's another case everyone's been very much interested in. I think I stopped covering it when some of the charges were dropped against Erica and some other state. I can't really remember.
You stopped covering it before he got indicted?
I think so.
Christopher, have you been covering it?
Yeah, I mean, it's
look at the hesitancy. All right.
Yeah, no,
we're going through it. Emily, in California, we're going through
I know.
it.
I'm still licensed in California.
Yeah.
I was trying to figure out all the things, and I was like, what has happened to my? I'm like, God, it's almost the deadline. I need to
exactly. Like I'm still coming out of that depression. So I don't know, Chris. We'll give you a minute to breathe before you respond.
I mean, it's terrible what he did, stealing money from any client. But then these clients, I mean, these were people who were injured and needed the money, had no other resources, and he stole from them and then had his wife, and himself using this money on this excess. So it's a disgusting.
On television, on social media.
And then when, there were, noises being made and accusations being made very, very early on about like, hey, I want to know what happened with this money. I want accounting. And then he comes in and threatens and intimidates and bullies and even had a private judge from, I think it was JAMS, one of these private judge outlets, basically vouch for him and help intimidate. And it's a disturbing story to me as a lawyer to see that conduct and to know there really won't be accountability. He's
Right.
Whatever is going to happen to him. I mean, I don't think it could be enough to make whole. So it's a bothersome story to me.
I don't know if they will be able to make everybody hold, but I don't think they're going to stop with trying to hold Girardi accountable. I think we've seen the CFO indicted now. I think we're going to see other lawyers. We've seen target letters go to other lawyers in the firm. And I think we might see other lawyers in the firm also be facing some criminal prosecution. The judge, it wasn't the California judges that did anything. It was the judge in Illinois with co-counsel Edelson PC. When Edelson PC rang the bell, which they were absolutely right to do, the judge in Illinois took action almost immediately because the settlement funds hadn't been paid out, freezing accounts, forwarding it for prosecution. And I think if there's a silver lining to that story at all, it's that ethical lawyers were able to raise the alarm the second that they saw it and put a stop to it. And none of this, I don't think, would have happened in the media if Edelson PC hadn't filed a lawsuit also, or a motion for contempt also within that filing. That's what brought it up to the general public. And that's kind of what the media started picking up on, is this lawsuit that was filed. And we see it in Murdaugh too, because Murdaugh started as stealing from clients and then maybe a suicide for hire roadside incident. But then the law firm, when the law firm had evidence that he'd been stealing, they immediately shut it down. They brought in outside counsel and the partners started repaying the clients out of their pocket. Most of the clients in the Murdaugh case, to the tunes of $10 million, have been made whole. But I don't know how you go home at night as a partner, look at your spouse and go, so our law partner stole from us. We're selling the beach house to pay our clients back. But we're seeing some egregious behavior. I think we're also seeing ethical lawyers step in and try to stop it. I just wonder how to catch it sooner. How do you catch it sooner?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, for us California lawyers, we that are watching, we've all had to now do this compliance thing and answer a lot of questions. So hopefully that will bring some more awareness of the lawyers about what we're supposed to do with the trust account. But it's a pretty simple rule. You don't steal people's money, but that is, like I say, a very bad case. Now, Limor, I saw a lot of cases with these, the renewed or extended statute of limitations for sex assault or sexual violence cases. I mean, this was Harvey Weinstein, Bill Cosby, Danny Masterson. So there were so many of these cases that were brought for things that happened in the 80s or 90s. And I mean, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that in terms of, I mean, I understand the justice component and it's been delayed for these victims, but then how do you defend yourself as a celeb for something that happened allegedly 30 years ago?
I think for me, the justice component is so significant that, our typical arguments sometimes are, your memory is off. The information is stale. We can't have it corroborated with any type of evidence. It becomes just a credibility issue on both sides, right? But I think the justice component, I'm glad that they're able to prosecute for things that happened X amount of years ago, just based on this is the time that, it's affecting this person now. The evidence is found now. I think that it's great and it's wonderful. But, on the other side of it, I guess there's an argument to be made that it's not fair, that the evidence would never hold. And then you have a jury deciding X, Y, and Z. And those are very, who doesn't want to put someone behind bars who's accused of rape? Right. Or, of all of these horrific things when there's just a little bit of evidence. That's not how the law works. But when you're dealing with a jury, I think that the feelings are so intense that, it's one of those things where I'm just glad that justice is being served. I would typically like to see a lot more evidence than we usually see. But I understand, and I think the audience a lot of the times understands that sometimes that part of it isn't there, which is unfair. That is unjust. But I don't have a problem with the timing, to be honest with you.
Can I pull another question from our audience? From AD Jackson, it says, how about if a cease and desist letter to the TikTok creator or any, I think, creator says it's strictly confidential, not for dissemination? Limor, how would that go on TikTok if somebody said strictly confidential, not for dissemination? What content would be created from that? What do you think?
I'm still posting it.
Right. Content creators.
We're still posting it.
Content
they
creators
do not
don't care.
If anything, the opener for that content is going to be
strictly confidential, not for dissemination.
Yes.
It'll be the title.
Guys, I have something really juicy for you. And people now, they do this, they tap on stuff. I have something really juicy for you. And I talked to Emily Baker and Chris Melcher, and we wanted to share this with you. That's how it would start. It would go viral. Nobody cares about that stuff. And if they have to defend themselves against it, they will. They don't care. Content creators, like Emily said earlier, do not care. And it's not because most of them want to go viral, because at this point, a lot of people have already made their names. We know if something's going to go viral or if it's not. It's really about putting truth out there. And if you're trying to shut someone up from telling the world something, they're going to want to tell the world something. And they don't care about putting up a fight.
And if they need to fund their lawsuit, they're going to talk about it. They are going to put up a GoFundMe about it. They are going to fan fund their litigation, and they are going to bring their entire audience in to go against you. So if you say confidential, this is going on now within the law space. 2 of the lawyers in the YouTube law space have lawsuits going, and they are community supporting their lawsuits. So your client might be paid, but their community is also helping them raise tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars to fight you. And they are going to make content out of it. So they are going to get crowdfunding, they are going to get content funding, and they are going to grow their audience about why your client sucks. And that is just the reality of it. And while I have seen people copyright them so that they could at least issue copyright strike takedowns, when creators don't care, they don't care unless you can get the platform to care to take the content down. And that becomes very difficult, because once the content comes down, now it's completely forbidden fruit, and it can actually end up pushing it more. And that's where you get that Streisand effect of, well, they've tried to take it down. They really don't want you to hear my voice, and they will pop up on other platforms and say it.
That
So-
is so, yes.
Yeah, Emily, if I'm the lawyer for the disgruntled party who didn't like your coverage, rather than sending the cease and desist letter, would it work for me just to saying like, hey, I want to tell my client's side? Is there a way of kind of making lemonade out of that lemon?
Oh, absolutely. If I don't like talking to parties in litigation, because I trust that the lawyers know what they can and can't say more than I trust that the parties know what they can and can't say. When lawyers reach out to me one-on-one with an email and are like, hey, can we have a conversation about this? I will always have a conversation, even if I disagree. But if you send me a cease and desist and attach an entire lawsuit to it, I am absolutely going to read it on a live stream and talk to my audience about it. But I generally don't do that with email and personal correspondence that come to me in a, can we have a conversation about this? Because again, if you approach me professionally, and though not all lawyers think that content creators are also professionals, but we are, especially when we're legal content creators, I will absolutely have a respectful conversation back. But the cease and desist I received, here's the thing. The cease and desist I received was regarding something that I covered that they attached to their lawsuit and then attached it to the cease and desist. They're like, we're unhappy that you covered this. I'm like, it is in the public record. So if you are going to ask me about something that is so obviously not a problem that I covered, then we have a little bit of a cover, but I can only speak for myself. There are some content creators who will not respond to those emails well. You need to know who you are dealing with and know their audience. You need to watch how they do things. There are some content creators who will just go on a campaign against the company, against the lawyer, against everyone else. And I can't say that their audiences won't blow up your work email address and your phone and be giving you feedback. I don't do that with my community. We don't do that with our communities, but not all content creators are the same, especially when you're dealing with non-professional content creators, non-legal content creators, or younger content creators who are like, oh, my audience thinks this lawyer sucks. This lawyer is this, their phone number is this, their address is this. And that can be a whole nother thing. And we've seen that with witnesses in Depp v. Heard. Did you see the articles from the witnesses that were complaining about people not liking their testimony and calling their work address and emailing their work? That's becoming a problem too. How do you prep a witness in a case like Depp v. Heard to be ready for that?
Yeah, and I think that one doctor, and I'm drawing a blank on his name now, but he was the forensic psychiatrist, and
we all know who.
Oh,
yeah.
His name is Dr. Spiegel.
Yeah, Dr. Spiegel. I mean, his testimony was so awful and bizarre, and he was just completely unaware of himself. But I think, yeah, he basically got run out of town after that, and I can understand at some level because he's going on he's on a televised trial. He's stating opinions that he's completely unqualified to state. He should not be stating. And I think, and there's other witnesses who came in and had their point of view, but they stayed within their lane, and I'm sure suffered none of those adverse consequences. This guy put himself out there and made himself a target. But yeah, I got to think that would be expected and understood that anyone coming in to a televised trial would know.
Where do the lawyers advise on that and say, hey, just know you're coming in to testify in this case. This is what we've seen. There has to be some awareness from plaintiff's counsel to at least let their witnesses and their experts know this. And I think some of that's on the lawyers, especially when you're not looking at one lawyer trying to run a 6-week trial. You're looking at a massive team of lawyers across 2 different law firms. They have to let these witnesses know. And if that is you as the attorney, you have to let the witnesses know, or someone on your team does. And this is, I think, a great thing and a great advocacy to make sure that your legal practice has younger attorneys on it that can kind of do this legwork and keep an eye on it and will enjoy it. If you tell somebody part of their day is going to be looking for stuff about your case on Reddit, you're going to have a very high employee satisfaction rate.
There we go. I love it. I love it. That's a job I would have loved to have my first year.
I mean, I would still love to have it now. There are AUSAs that are watching Real Housewives for Jen Shaw's indictment that are cataloging the purses in her closet. I was never asked to catalog purses as a district attorney, and I feel cheated out of my career because of it. Where is the special housewives unit at the AUSA's office? I might tap out of YouTube to go back to prosecution to do that, but it would be a lot. I don't know if they could afford me anymore, but they
can't, Emily. They can't. They couldn't before, I'm sure too.
Probably can't now. But it's just, there's this whole other world of using not just what's on television, but what's on social media in your cases that is time consuming, but also critical.
Yeah. Well, we've come up on our hour. Any final comments?
If you need help with social, reach out to us. If you want to send a cease and desist, don't do it. Just send us an email.
Well, no, if you want to send a cease and desist to a party that is a content creator, though, you need to have a strategy talk with your client. It's not as simple as just sending a cease and desist. And you need to have that, what happens when this person makes content out of it, and what does that look like? Sometimes a cease and desist is the only option for your client, and sometimes it'll go well for your client, but just have the awareness that this is a very different world than it was even pre-pandemic.
Yes.
Practicing. It is a very different world.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think it for the best. And because it could be a conversation and it could be a sharing of information and learning about the facts of your case, or developing arguments, testing them out, getting your client's story out there in a way that we would never have been able to do 20 years ago. Well, I appreciate everybody, coming, and I love this conversation. Maybe we'll get to do it for 2023 celeb year in review.
We didn't know where to find us. I hate to interrupt, Christopher. Where do we find you and all of your stuff?
Sure. So if you go to Twitter, CA_divorce, that's my handle there. So happy to connect up with you there, and meet you and share ideas with you on Twitter.
Limor?
I'm all over TikTok at Lawyer Limor. I'm also on IG. Probably an easier way to get in touch with me is through IG DMs.
You also have a podcast, don't you, Limor?
I also have a podcast called Love and Order, and we're on season 2. And I have an episode with Chris, and I should have an episode with Emily D. Baker, but we need to get this Murdaugh trial to the end, and maybe then she'll be on the podcast.
Emily's been unfortunately busy. You can find me all over the internet at the Emily D. Baker. I stream on YouTube. And if you want to know what the content creator side of lawyering is like, please don't hesitate to reach out. My email, I have a public facing email. I'm on all the social platforms, but it's the Emily D. Baker everywhere. And if you just want to come watch the Murdaugh trial, we are streaming it on my YouTube with live commentary and chat every single day. It's a fascinating new way to engage with trials. If you want to catch up, we're in the defense case now. So the defense says they're going through Friday. The 3-week trial, the jury is now in the middle of week 5 and questioning all of their life decisions. So that's where we're at with that. And a huge thank you to the Beverly Hills Bar Association for I think they really have worked very hard to make sure that lawyers are on the forefront of what's happening across our profession. And that's something I'm not seeing a lot of other people tap into. This is still, law tends to follow behind tech by years. And the Beverly Hills Bar Association is not doing that at all. They're really pushing those conversations, and I'm glad to be a part of it with y'all. I enjoy your content so much.
Thank you so much. I am too. I love the Beverly Hills Bar. Thank you for leaning into this type of content. It's so important for all of the attorneys to be aware of what's going on in this world, because it's interrelated to all of your cases.
All right. Well, thanks for spending the time, and we'll see you next time.